In today's video, we're going to be updating my recommendation list for best rackets for aggressive baseliners. These are the players who love blasting huge balls from the baseline, smashing those huge serves, taking the ball early, and just bashing through the court with raw power. So here's what I'm looking for when recommending rackets for aggressive baseliners. Number one, excellent stability. You need to be able to drive through the ball on every single shot without worrying about your racket twisting or shuddering on off-center contact. And number two is consistent string bed. You really need to be able to trust the launch angle of your racket to confidently take charge of every shot. And then from there, it's pretty much just up to personal preference. I'm not gonna hold all of those giant rackets for this entire time. Do you want higher power, lower power? Do you dominate the court with spin? Are you a flatter hitter? Do you like a plusher, softer feel? Or do you want something a bit firmer, crisper, and more responsive? For today's video, we're going to be going in order of power. So most powerful at the beginning, least powerful at the end, and I'll be sure to include my customization and string recommendations as we go. So starting off with our most powerful options, I'm looking to Beckett. Both the Pure Drive and the Pure Aero 100s are excellent options because they have basically class-leading stability, these edge-to-edge sweet spots, and incredibly predictable string beds. Now you're probably immediately disagreeing with me, like the Pure Aero, the Pure Drive, they have inconsistent string beds, they're launchy, they're crappy. And I will admit it, a racket like the Pure Drive has a pretty open 16x19 string pattern. The Pure Aero 100 is a spin racket. Those two factors, generally they don't lead to consistent string beds. But on the newest versions, I believe that we do have very consistent string beds. Let's start with the Pure Drive. Yes, the drill pattern is pretty open, but the response that you get from this racket is incredibly consistent. Now the launch angle might be higher than your typical control racket, but it's consistently high. No matter where you make contact on the frame, you can expect a very similar ball trajectory. This is due in large part to the flex of the Pure Drive. There's essentially zero twisting or bending off center. That, when combined with a huge sweet spot and huge forgiveness, means that you get incredible control through the sheer consistency of the frame. You can always predict that this racket is going to behave the same on every single shot. And the same is very much true with the Pure Aero 100. But there's two small differences. Number one, we get a slightly denser 16x19 string pattern, so we are going to see a little bit of a lower launch angle. And number two, spin just comes more easily, especially on those low balls that you have to lift up. Now I would say that pure control, the sensation of being dialed in, is probably a little bit better with a racket like the Pure Aero, but you still have to work kind of hard to find power with this frame because the racket can swing a little bit slowly depending on the spec that you get. Now what I like about these two rackets for aggressive baseliners is of course the consistency, which we mentioned, but they're so stable you can really just take charge of any ball you want. Putting your weight through that court, you're going to be able to deliver a lot of power both from help from the racket, but the racket's also there to work for you, work with you, deliver power when you're behind the baseline or leaning in and on the front foot. Sometimes that extra power from a stiff 100 square inch racket is the difference between creating a ball that's going to cough up a short one from your opponent, and if you're using a more low powered racket that could just lead to what your opponent feels like is just a rally ball. Now when it comes to string setups, there's a lot of different stuff that works for these Becketts. I don't find them to be overly string sensitive. I would probably recommend not going for something too stiff unless you know that you like a stiffer string in a stiffer racket. For a lot of players, going to something like RPM Blast, which is the recommended string by Beckett for these frames, is going to be a little bit too stiff, injury risk, just not as forgiving as you could go for. I like Otoro in the Aero, for example, and I know that Ali, who's on the channel frequently, she's been loving Restring Vivo in her Pure Drive. Now moving on to all-around 100 square inch rackets, we'll start with two, one that's great for flat hitters and one that's great for spin hitters. Starting off with spin, we've got the 2025 Speed Legend / 26 Speed MP, whenever however that ends up happening. It's a little bit confusing by head. But I did really love this high bore update for these speeds. Stiffening this racket face without sacrificing feel or comfort just led to improved stability, spin, power, and consistency. As with the last couple of speeds, you can expect swing weights to be kind of in the high 320s. This might feel slow to some players, but I don't think you need to be afraid of high 320s because you're going to be getting better stability with that higher number and easier power, better court penetration as long as you get your swing speed up. You got to be a little bit more on your toes with this one compared to the arrow or the drive, as there can be a hint of fluttering on off-center shots with the speed, but that said, this racket really plays best when you keep your swing speeds high. You go after every single shot with high swing speed and just keep your foot on the gas all the time, just like Jannik Sinner. The other caveat with the speed MP is you're going to want to have some decent spin in your game, as the launch angle can be a little bit high and the string bed can be grabby, so if you don't have that spin, you might launch it just a little bit, just from time to time. I noticed that, but in most cases, I'm trusting this frame on every shot. When it comes to string setups, I do like something a little bit firmer, more predictable. I love Grapplesnake Tour M8. Headlinks Tour is great. I even hit RPM Blast in this, and it worked a lot better for me here than like my usual Toro line Otoro. But if you're a flatter hitter and you want like a medium powered 100, I would look directly at the Percept 100D. This is one of my favorite rackets that I tested last year. It's a little bit more forgiving, more natural feeling, and more controlled than the Speed MP is going to be, and it offers a very uniform layup of graphite that delivers a pretty organic response. In stock form, spin actually comes pretty easily with the 100D, even though it has that dense 18 main pattern. But I think this racket really comes alive when you add a little bit of weight, get it into that kind of brick house territory. I throw a leather grip on there, a little bit of weight at 12, and it's just perfect for its personality. It can absolutely lace heavy, hard shots up the line. Direction changes are super easy and super consistent with that tighter pattern. And honestly, the 100D is probably my favorite racket on this list so far. And string-wise, my favorite, definitely Toro line Caviar. It's kind of like Poly Tour Pro, but with better tension maintenance and better spin because you get the edge, but also a glossy, more snapbacky, slick finish. Moving into the Power 98 class, I'm looking at one of the all-time greats for baseline bashing. It's the Babolat Pure Strike 98. Available in two different string patterns, both belong on this list, 1619 and 1820. From the 1820, you'll expect a lower launch angle. It's going to feel a little bit harder to use without huge swing speeds, and the 16x19 will lift the ball and deliver spin a little bit more easily in comparison. Now, on paper, the Strike is really hard to beat for a pure baseline weapon. Huge swing weight, solid twist weight, stiff or very uniform flex. These things absolutely bludgeon the ball. The issue with them is weight, more specifically swing weight. A lot of players, especially those used to the more whippy frames of the 2020s, are going to find these strikes kind of clubby and kind of slow. You definitely have to put in work with your swing, with your hips, to get enough racket head speed to create spin. But when you do get things going, this thing is a brick house, an absolute truck through the ball. You can easily redirect the pace of even the heaviest balls, relying on that swing weight, that string bed to redirect power, to change direction. You can trust it, and when you've got time, you can use all that mass to unleash absolutely epic power. For strings, I like something a little bit softer in these frames, again because they can be a little bit stiff, and I do like going something shaped to help lift that ball. Even the 1619 has a relatively low launch for what it is. I would go for something Otoro or Mach 10. That's where I would start my string journey with those frames. If you want something that's like the Strike but comes in a little bit more of an accessible swing weight, a more comfortable package, I'd be looking at the Slinko Whiteout. This is the brain dead version, which will be restocked at some point in the future, but the Arctic Camo or whatever is also on this list. Now, this is a racket that I was relatively critical of in the initial review when it first came out, but it's also a racket that I just keep coming back to every couple of weeks, like at least every month I pick this thing up again Helps me find my groove, find the strokes. From the back of the court, there's something about this racket that just feels easy for my game. The power and stability on this V2 has got to be the highest in the sub 22mm beam category. The layup is uniform, it's consistent, unlike some of the recent offerings from Head or Yonex. And at the end of the day, this racket just does what you tell it to do. You're going to be getting considerably more power, stability, spin, and forgiveness than something like the Wilson Blade or the Radical MP without making any tangible sacrifices in control or feel. In fact, I generally prefer the feel of this Whiteout to that Blade or that Radical. I think this Whiteout plays best with something kind of crisp and lively, specifically in my other one on the wall, I've got the white version of Otoro, which is crisp and powerful. You could also go for like Grapple Snake Alpha or Tour Bite Soft. Those would be great as well. Now moving on to the last category, control sticks, our most controlled frames. Starting off with probably my favorite racket of 2025. It's the Technofiber TFIGHT 305S. To be honest, this is not exactly a low-powered option, but this is 2025 and players at all levels are hitting bigger than they ever have. I think this is generally due to three reasons. Of course, graphite rackets and polyester strings have made lasting changes to modern tennis technique, but at the rec level especially, I think those free coaching resources you can find online have helped people improve faster than ever before. And because of this, I think that even the hardest hitting players should probably at least consider going for a little bit more power if they can. And the 305S is a great example of that little bit of extra power and spin in what is packaged to be a modern control racket. You've got 18 mains for that directional control, 19 crosses for a little bit of extra spin, a modern elliptical beam shape for stability, and a medium swing weight for solid court penetration without sacrificing racket head speed. Yes, this is a stiff racket and the wrong string is going to ruin its comfort, but that's kind of what we've got with modern tennis. This thing loves being swung at full speed. It's just whippy enough to really rip up the back of any ball, even if you're on the run or a little bit out of position. It's just stable enough to manhandle even the heaviest of balls from your opponent. And for strings, my favorite, for sure my favorite in this frame is Grapple Snake Tour Mako. It's soft, so you kind of alleviate any comfort concerns. It's super grippy, has a sandpapery texture, gives you this connected feel to the ball, gives you that tight spin that this racket just loves to hit. And because this is a dense pattern 1819, the durability issues that I saw with Mako in my super open pure aero Rafa, I just don't have them. Now all that said, if you're like, I need to have low power, I need to have maximum control, then my final suggestion, last racket on this list, it's the Head Gravity Pro. Huge spin for an 1820. This thing basically needs no introduction, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Oodles of control, great feel. It's a little bit artificial in the most recent Auxetic 2.0 update, but the trade-off that you get with this newer version is it's easier to swing, it's faster to accelerate, you don't have this clunky clubbiness that we had with the original Gravity Pro, which may have felt better, but I think kind of swung a little bit worse. This is a racket that demands full commitment by you, the player, on every single shot if you want to get any court penetration, but it's also a racket that I can pick up and just instantly groove with. It's a racket that has such a pure identity, knows exactly who it is on court, that it's one that you're probably just gonna fall in love with. Now, if you think any of these rackets might be right for you, I have